I know it's getting late, and I hate to keep you. We've been on the air for, my goodness, this is a
I see it,
marathon.
5.5 hours.
5.5 hours.
My goodness.
Um, I don't know if Rick has any more questions. I've got one more myself that I just wanted to ask you. It's kind of turning back to here in the United States. I just wanted to get your thoughts on the FBI raid of President Trump's Mar-a-Lago because I know that you have your own personal experience being targeted by the FBI. I remember back in the 90s when they harassed you for years. They tried to set you up on espionage charges. They accused you of being an Israeli spy, that your wife was a KGB agent. They made your lives a living hell, and this went on for years. Can you briefly touch on some of your own experience with the FBI for some of our younger viewers who might not remember all that, and Trump and what just happened with Trump?
Well, what I can say is that the FBI is not the law enforcement agency that everybody makes it out to be. It's literally the Gestapo of the federal government. It doesn't exist to protect uh, civil liberties. It exists to trample civil liberties. That's just a statement of fact. We know this by their continued behavior. One only has to take a look at what they did in Waco, what they did in Ruby Ridge. And I'm not a conspiracy theorist. I'm just saying this is just the reality. It's how they operate. If you study their history, there's no reason for the FBI to exist. J. Edgar Hoover turned what's supposed to be this minor little federal agency into this massive law enforcement agency, which isn't. It's never been about law enforcement. It's always been about intimidation. Always. The way the FBI wins is to overwhelm a problem with numbers. They just make it impossible for you to resist. On the national security front, I'll give you a story. 9/11, plane flies into the World Trade Center. Two planes do. Buildings are evacuated. One of the buildings evacuated, I think, was the Marriott Hotel, which is right in that area. Afterwards, after everything was said and done, the FBI did a sweep of the Marriott Hotel just for security purposes. And in one room, they found a ICOM ground to air radio. And they went, "Oh my God, the terrorists were here," and they found who was in the room at the time of the attack. He was an Egyptian student. So they arrested him. And they said, "You were communicating
I remember that.
with
Yeah.
the airplanes." And he went, "No, I wasn't communicating with the airplanes." "Yes, you were." And the FBI agent that was interrogating them did some amazing things. He got the Egyptians to arrest the guy's mother. And he said, "If you don't admit to this, then we will videotape them raping your mother and killing your mother, and we'll show that to you. If you want to save your mother's life, you have to confess." And he went, "Oh my God." So he confessed. "I did it. I was communicating with the terrorists. That's my radio." And right after he signed the confession letter, an airline pilot comes in and says, "Hey, about a week before 9/11, I was staying at the Marriott, and I got this ICOM radio, you see, and I like to listen. We all the pilots, we just listen to the radio traffic. It's sort of a pilot thing. We like to do it. And but I left it. Did anybody find the radio?" They went, "You mean the one that the Egyptian used?" So the FBI agent that coerced this false confession from the Egyptian, that he knew was a false confession. He knew it. They needed a confession because they needed a story. Because the FBI is not about the truth. They're not about the truth. They're about intimidation and about creating perceptions. And there needed to be a perception that the Muslims were attacking America. And so they needed to create this. That FBI agent was the same guy that. So now we come to me. So I'm working at the United Nations, and I was brought in to create this intelligence capability at the UN, which doesn't exist. I challenge everybody to find the UN phone book, open it up to where it says United Nations Intelligence Agency. It doesn't exist. I
No
built it
such
from the
animal.
ground up. And in building this intelligence capability, I incurred the wrath of the United States government, who were objected to not being in control, because information is power. And the people that provide the intelligence that are used to gin up inspections are the ones dictating the pace of operations on the ground in Iraq. And that's very important if you want to use the inspections to create the perception of Iraqi noncompliance so that you can continue economic sanctions to get rid of Saddam Hussein. The last thing you want is an independent organization that actually believes in disarmament. And the irony is, the more I succeeded as a weapons inspector in Iraq, the more I threatened the United States. One of the things that happened around 1994, the United States, we had a U-2 airplane. It's a U.S. Air Force airplane, but it was painted in UN colors, and it responded to our instructions per an agreement that we had with the United Nations, or with the United States. So we determined where it was going to fly, and we controlled the product. The United States, though, they played games. They said, well, you can tell us where to fly, but we'll really fly where we want to fly. And when we take pictures, we may or may not release them to you. And when we release them, they'll be done in the way we want to do it. And that worked with the first group of people at the United Nations, because they didn't know anything about the U-2. They were like, oh, wow, the U-2. They brought me in. I used the U-2. I directed the U-2 throughout the Gulf War to hunt down Iraqi Scuds. I know everything about the U-2. I know about all the different cameras, all the different sensors. I know how it works. I know what the product looks like. And they came in to brief, and I looked at it, and I went, you guys degraded the quality of that image. That's crap. Where's the real image? We did not. I said, you absolutely did. And then I said, we want infrared sensors. We don't fly the infrared sensor. You do. I tasked it during the war. And they got so pissed off at me because, boom. But I also told them that the people that were coming down to brief us were doing just a really crap job, really bad job. They'd come in, they'd put up an image of a site that I just inspected the week before. They'd say, suspected activity here, there, and everywhere. I said, there's nothing suspected about it. We know exactly what's going on. I was just there. Didn't you read my report? They had. I said, so why don't you allow us to jointly exploit this imagery? If we're the ones tasking the airplane and we're the ones in control of the product, why don't we get to exploit the product the way we need to? And the U.S. government said, no, we're not going to let you do that. So I called their bluff. I said, well, since we own the product, what if I take the product to, say, Israel, who has great photographic interpretation capability, and they'll exploit it with me. And in doing so, I'll gain access to the Israeli intelligence database so that we can make sure that at the end of the day, when we decide Iraq is disarmed, Israel can't slide an envelope under the door and say, yeah, but you didn't inspect this. This gives me the ability to empty Israel's intelligence, test any theory they have so that we can be more confident in our finding of disarmament. The Israelis were willing to play ball. And the CIA was willing to play ball because they had no choice. And so I actually wrote letters to the CIA saying, this is the track we want you to fly, and I want you to release this film to me. And then I'd write a receipt saying I'm taking this film to Israel. And then I'd work with the Israelis using a joint protocol. And I'd come back and I'd brief everybody on what happened. I had CIA permission to do this. The problem is there was a part of the CIA that didn't like this. Thought that I was too independent. I was not pursuing their policy of regime change. I was pursuing disarmament, which was inconvenient. And so they started accusing me of spying for Israel. I said, well, how can I spy for Israel if I got your permission to do this and everything I'm doing is, known to you in advance? How's that spying? And they were able to hold this up. There was a period of time in 1998 where I was told in the summer of 1998 that the FBI was going to arrest me and question me. They never did. One of the reasons why they didn't is that the good guys at the CIA actually got the legal counsel to write a letter that said that everything I was doing was approved, so it couldn't be espionage. But when I resigned, I was told by the CIA that if I resigned, the FBI was going to, they used a very colorful phrase, I won't use it, but they were going to blank me in the blank, fill in the blanks yourself. I said, okay, well, so what? The day I resigned, the FBI released to CBS News, Dan Rather, leading story, Scott Ritter, the weapons inspector from the UN that just resigned, is being investigated by the FBI for espionage. And the charges that they were hitting me with are the kind that bring the death penalty. These are serious charges. And by doing that, they ended any ability of me to get gainful employment. Nobody's going to hire a guy that's under investigation for espionage, etc. They also forced me to get a lawyer to fight these charges. I eventually won. They dropped them. It was a great victory for me and for truth. But there was this always this tension. After 9/11, the FBI thought that I could be useful in their Iraqi thing. The Iraqis were reaching out to me, and the FBI thought that I could help get in contact with the foreign minister and maybe get him to defect to the United States. And I said, okay, I'll work with you on this one. But they said, but before you do that, your wife, and here's the other, it gets a complicated story. My wife, when I was doing the whole United Nations thing in 1995, decided that she was going to get a job to help the family out. And she called my father. I was deployed in Iraq. She said, I'd like to get a job. What do you think I could do? My dad said, well, you speak Russian, don't you? Yeah, I'm a fluent Russian speaker. Why don't you apply to the FBI to be a Russian linguist for the FBI? She said, okay. So she submitted the application. And apparently the FBI thought that this was a big KGB setup, that somehow she was trying to join the FBI to gain access to classified information that she couldn't give to me, so I would give it to the Russians. It was just really stupid, but they had this theory. And so she was on a list, a congressional list. Every year, Congress gets briefed by the FBI on known hostile intelligence efforts to penetrate the U.S. security system. And so my wife was listed as a known hostile penetration effort. So her name was on that. And they said, well, we can't cooperate you until we clear this issue up with your wife. So I went and talked to my wife, and I said, they want you to take a polygraph. She said, okay, I'll take a polygraph. And so I met with the FBI, and there was these two FBI ladies, and they were all like, oh, yes, we'll work with your wife. This will be a very non-hostile thing. We're going to cooperate, We'll be, it's really pro forma. We're just going to get it done. Boom. Well, the day of the polygraph came, my wife went to the local FBI field office. Those girls weren't anywhere to be found. Who was there? The same FBI agent who set the Egyptian up. The same FBI agent who set the Egyptian up. He's now giving my wife a polygraph, and it's a hostile polygraph. It's not a real polygraph. He starts right off by saying, you're lying. You submitted false data. I could arrest you and put you in jail right now for falsifying things. And my wife said, wait, I thought this was supposed to be a polygraph. You're sitting here attacking me. If you don't cooperate, we're going to screw your brother. We're going to screw your father, because her parents were living with us because they were refugees from Georgia. And we're going to screw your husband. We need you to confess. Da, 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 da. She was like, screw you. You got some, mommy? Arrest me right now. If not, I'm out of here. But that's the FBI. The FBI sucks. It's a horrible organization filled with horrible people. There's nothing honorable about an FBI agent, because they know exactly what they're doing. They know that they're there not to protect America, but to oppress America. Now we get to the question that was asked about Donald Trump. I don't know the details. Okay. Did Donald Trump do X? Was this? What I do know is that this raid should never have happened under any circumstances. The Department of Justice knows that the moment you cross that line, you have politicized the Department of Justice and the FBI, even if they are justified in their actions. And the health of the American body politic outweighs any concern they might have had about unauthorized handling of classified information. First of all, the FBI should be reminded that the President of the United States has the authority, unilateral authority, to declassify anything and everything. All you have to do is say it's declassified. And so if Trump, before leaving office, said, all this stuff's declassified, it is declassified. So the FBI has no case, none. And it won't hold up in court. None of this will hold up in court, assuming that's what they were going after. But they definitely allowed themselves to be exposed as a tool of the U.S. government. And we know this, that they've done this before. The entire investigation into Trump out of the 2016 election was FBI abuse. They manufactured a case. They used Christopher Steele's dossier, which they knew was garbage. They weaponized that. They went after Carter Page. They lied, because that's all the FBI does is lie. They submitted false affidavits to a judge to get the FISA warrants to go after Carter Page as an indirect way of getting Donald Trump, which they're not allowed to do, but they did it anyways. You think the FBI told the truth to this magistrate judge in South Florida? You think they told them everything? No, they never tell the truth. They always lie, and there's never any ramifications. Now, I'm not sitting here saying this because I think Donald Trump is the best thing since sliced bread. I don't. I'm furious at Donald Trump for January 6th. I'm furious at Donald Trump for the frontal assault against the Constitution of the United States. But that doesn't mean that it's open season on Donald Trump, that the FBI gets to do whatever it wants to do. And if the FBI had any care for this country, they have to know that all they're doing is tearing this country apart. Then again, that's what the FBI has been about ever since they were formed.